I thought it might be fun and painful for us to go through some of our past videos, some clips from our past videos.
Low, but I was looking at that 0.5 retracement level. That's what I was hoping for. And we're about ready to close against a slower 8 EMA on the daily chart. I'd like to see some confirmation here of potential for a continuation in a move upward. But what I found fascinating was that increase in global liquidity. Now we haven't quite pushed beyond the highest level of this index, which was back in February of 23 or January of 23. But that we broke a recent high tells me something here. I mean, this horizontal line here should kind of tell us something that we're pushing above, and that's promising in terms of how much capital might be on the sidelines for the crypto markets.
Ooh, baby, you're looking at this is the face of a Tom Hartman who's about to go levered long 50x on Bitcoin after this call. That's what's happening. All right, so that was fun for me. The what has been like the solid through line that we've had for this year was this introduction of liquidity. I know for I don't know. I don't hear about it much. I hear about it more now, but even now, I'm not hearing just regular traders talk about global dollar liquidity levels and how important that is for asset markets. Is that something you were always paying attention to?
Not necessarily. I mean, I've placed a lot more of my attention on actual traded volume more than anything else, but global liquidity ended up becoming a contributory indicator for us at that time. However, it is there are some questions to answer about why the price still pushes upward despite global liquidity pulling back at this point.
That's right.
If we can share my screen real quick, we'll show what happened after I made that prediction. There was that close above that shorter term 8 EMA, and if I can turn my charts back on here, you can kind of see my thought was that we would likely see a pullback against this resistance line, which is exactly what happened. I wanted to see a close above that line to see if we can continue to march upward. But the big question was whether or not we were going to cross that $74,000 mark, and that was a projected resistance zone on my side. I know we had a couple of other updates on that one. Sure enough, I think it almost perfectly wicked that $74,000 line. It was 73,581, at least on Coinbase. Oh, this is the all-time. So this index is actually an aggregate of multiple exchanges, but it did pull back, and we saw a throwback from that trend line, and that pushed us into this new price range where we're at now, and finally actually got us where we needed to be. But getting past those resistance zones were a big one that I was waiting for. That was that confirmation zone that I've described in the past. What's interesting though is since we were talking about how far and how high global liquidity had increased since the 30th of September, that's actually pulled back quite a bit, and yet price has continued to go upward. Did you have thoughts on that divergence?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, well, I'll play something else at the same time here, right before I answer that question, because I had that same issue. Because there's what I was making my predictions also based on what's going on with the U.S. dollar,
Right.
and if you remember, I was thinking that the dollar should pull back, and then it did it. So let me just play that one here real quick. All right, so I'm looking for price to get back to get down to here to the 50K level or around the 50K level. But anywhere around here is where I'd be thinking for a first low in like if there's going to be a bottom at all, it could be around this area here. Especially since for the dollar, so we got that bounce. I know we talked about this last week. We got that bounce in the dollar, the 100 level.
Yep.
We've bounced again, but it's always about the lower high, right? So the lower high over here didn't break up to this level, which is what I was sort of my doomsday scenario, like short-term doomsday scenarios that we get back up to 102. We didn't. So my question is, if this bounce is the bounce that leads us there, if this is the higher low, but even if it is, it does to me suggest that we're going to be moving sideways through this area before we then eventually break down below 100, which is then bullish for crypto and for assets. What are you thinking as far as price for Bitcoin?
I think that.
All right. So if you're noticing that there, I was right about where Bitcoin should bottom. let me just pull up the chart real quick right here. Yeah, so that video here was talking about over here
Yep.
in this area, and then we actually did come down here. So this seasonal wave has been very, very good to me for that sort of thing, and it did bottom over there. But you're right, this rise happened with the dollar also rising. I mean, dramatically. So this is the US dollar. And we certainly didn't stop at that level I was talking about in the video. We cleared it. I mean, we cleared it to a local high. We pulled back and even moving up still.
Mm-hmm.
While bond yields pretty much stayed a little bit flat, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So what I'm wondering about here is if I should just also mention at the same time, the Nasdaq. So gold stayed stagnant, and the Nasdaq and the S&P, although they reached the highs that we were talking about, like 6,100 on the SPY, we've actually just been pulling back from there. So I'm wondering